Father Pierre Ducharme, Franciscan, pastor of St. Joseph the Worker Parish in Richmond, BC. What I like about Pope Francis, what do I not like about Pope Francis? I think back to just when he walked out on the balcony with such simplicity, such humanity, and how exciting that was. First of all, it was exciting for me as a Franciscan because he took the name of our founder, Francis of Assisi. I was excited too because he was from another part of the world. He was from the Americas and really brought with him sort of a breath of renewal. And it is what he has been about. Of course, he's pointed us towards Jesus in all that he does. We think about his interactions with, as Franciscans, I look at that image of him with that man who had that disease that was covered all over his face, and there he was kissing that man's head. And it's such a genuine image of Jesus with the lepers. And as a Franciscan, that really resonates, and we understand what that's all about. But I gotta say that on another level, for me as a pastor, as somebody who is wanting, of course, to grow as a pastor, I look at Pope Francis really for his leadership. He's come to the world stage at a time when the world is looking for leadership, perhaps more than ever. There is a dearth of figures on this planet who truly inspire and lead with integrity. One of the ways that Pope Francis has demonstrated his leadership is through listening, through the ministry of listening. We're very used to preaching. As Christians, we can preach. I can preach. In fact, preaching is one of my favorite things to do. But the real challenge, the real gift of a good leader is his or her ability to listen. That is, to hold tension. Pope Francis has done this by introducing synodality into the life of the church. And for many of us who don't have that experience of a listening church or a synodal church at a local level, not in our parishes, not in our diocese, just not in our country, it's something that can be challenging. Pope Francis, of course, comes from another part of the world, a part of the world where that's commonplace, where listening and working together with your colleagues, where pastors work together on projects, that's normal in a Latin American context. And it's beautifully prophetic. It's wonderfully good. And so Pope Francis, with his leadership, is bringing that to us and bringing that to us as Christians, as Catholics throughout the world. And I really am inspired by this, so much so that what I want to do as a pastor is model his every move. I look at Pope Francis as someone who can show us how to listen, show us how to hold tension, and therefore become a church that has integrity. We're a church that has integrity, a church when we connect with people, and we connect with people when we're seen to have integrity. That means if someone is suffering out on the periphery for any reason, that person knows that they can go, can enter the communion of the faithful and be heard, be listened to. I really believe that that is something that we all want. We want to be heard as Christians, and we have such a prophetic Pope, someone who listens to everyone, but primarily, first and foremost, he listens to the poor. That's what Jesus did too, by the way. Jesus was someone who expressed in his ministry a preferential option for the poor. The poor mattered most. If we as Christians follow the example of our Holy Father and place the poor at the center of our ministry, the center of the life of the church, we can change the world. Pope Francis wants to change the world. One of the things Pope Francis said in his very first document, Evangelii Gaudium, he says, "I prefer a church that is bruised and battered because it's been out on the streets, rather than one is sick for having been hanging out in the sacristy staring at itself in the mirror, so to speak." And I guarantee it, because Pope Francis is such a leader and what he says is true. And by the way, he is so consistent. If you read all of his documents, he is consistent. He says the same thing over and over and over again, and he means it. Pope Francis, one day, his time will come. Whether he dies of natural causes or he's assassinated or he just resigns. But I guarantee you, he will leave this church bruised and battered, but alive and well, because it has been out on the streets.